Cool, guys. So we are starting a brand new series this week. It's a series on heaven and the kingdom of God, things like that. So like light, airy fairy stuff. No, I'm only kidding. It's cool and deep, but it's going to be super helpful. I'm hoping. And so what is the kingdom of God, right? Because that's like quite a nebulous term, like kingdom of God, like whoa. But I mean, and it actually is quite hectic, the answer to the question. But if we were to simplify it, which is always helpful, it's kind of like an earthly kingdom. So if you think of a place, right? So this is the place, right? And this is a kingdom. The king reigns here, all right? And as the kingdom, gains more territory, the kingdom grows, right? And it's kind of like that. So let's take this as the earth. The three of us are the earth, right? And then Jesus comes down and I give my life to him. So this is the kingdom of God. Okay? Don't get me wrong. God is not out of control outside of his kingdom and only in control in his kingdom. So don't get that wrong. But the kingdom, in other words, I live for him. He rules and reigns in my life. That's where the kingdom of God is. And then Jess comes and she gives her heart to Jesus, because I tell her about Jesus. And she gives her heart to Jesus. Give us a peace sign that you've given your heart to Jesus. There we go. And now the kingdom of God has grown, right? And then Jess speaks to Renkia here. And guess what? Renkia waves her way into the kingdom of God. Oh, yeah. Now this is the kingdom of God, right? So can you see how the kingdom of God has grown? He rules and reigns in our hearts, and we live for him. And this is where the kingdom of God outworks. Okay, so that's a very simplified version of kind of what we're talking about. But it's not just here and now. The kingdom of God comes to fruition, comes to full impact when Jesus comes again, takes us to be with him, and then we live with him forever. And that is when the kingdom of God is just like next level, Super Saiyan for all the what is it? Yu-Gi-Oh, Pokemon, something like that.
It's Dragon Ball Z.
Dragon Ball Z, thank you. I knew it was one of them.
Same.
And so Jess is going to read from our Bible passage today. Let's go.
For the kingdom of heaven is like the landowner who went out early one morning to hire workers for his vineyard. He agreed to pay the normal daily wage and sent them out to work. At 9 o'clock in the morning, he was passing through the marketplace and saw some people standing around doing nothing. So he hired them, telling them he would pay them whatever was right at the end of the day. So they went to work in the vineyard. At noon, and again at 3 o'clock, he did the same thing. At 5 o'clock that afternoon, he was in town again and saw some more people standing around. He asked them, "Why haven't you been working today?" They replied, "Because no one hired us." The landowner told them, "Then go out and join the others in my vineyard." That evening, he told the foreman to call the workers in and pay them, beginning with the last workers first. When those hired at 5 o'clock were paid, each received a full day's wage. When those hired first came to get their pay, they assumed they would receive more, but they too were paid a day's wage. When they received their pay, they protested to their owner. "Those people worked only 1 hour, and yet you've paid them just as much as you paid us, who worked all day in the scorching heat." He answered one of them, "Friend, I haven't been unfair. Didn't you agree to work all day for the usual wage? Take your money and go. I wanted to pay this last worker the same as you. Is it against the law for me to do what I want with my money? Should you be jealous because I am kind to others? So those who are last now will be first then, and those who are first will be last."
Sure. So Jesus explained to his disciples and to us what the kingdom of heaven is like, what is the kingdom of heaven, and he used parables a lot to explain the kingdom of heaven, and this is one of them. So we want to hear from you guys, what stood out to you out of that parable? Maybe read it again, or rewind, go back and just listen to Jess tell it again. So let us know. Post in the comment section below and let us know what you guys think. We're going to kind of share what stood out to us. So one of the things that stood out to me in this was God's sovereignty, right? Because the farmer represents God. Okay, so he is the God character in this parable, and what he said went, right? And I mean, there's also the weird stuff that went on, but it just spoke to me about that God is sovereign. God knows more than we do, and we're going to unpack it a little bit more now, because at first you read this and you're like, what the heck? But you'll see just now. And he knows the best, and he's got kind of everything in control. What do you guys think?
Well, for me, it was like of the unfairness of just like how the laborers worked at different times, but yet again they get paid the same. And that's so relatable to us. We feel like so many things in this world might be unfair. We might be treated unfairly, or even like the farmer, or who represents God in this parable, like he might be unfair. But ultimately, if you think about it, he represents God. And how this plays into the kingdom of God, it's like God's way of thinking what is fair and what is unfair is not the way we think. It's just like an upside down kind of like world. The kingdom of God is like the passage ends with the last shall be first and the first shall be last kind of thing. And I think that plays into just the question of, doesn't this seem unfair? It shows us that our unfairness and God's fairness is the opposite. It's not the same, and that kind of stands out to me because it helps me to see and live in this world differently, to adopt that and trust God's sovereignty, like Brett said.
Good, because life's unfair sometimes, right? Don't we think,
Yeah.
that's unfair.
Yeah.
And kind of gives you hope that maybe there is a solution, maybe there is an answer, maybe it's not as unfair as we think it is.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think for me, what stood out the most is God's grace. That, like as humans, we are so flawed, and we kind of it's cool when God gives us grace, but not that cool when he gives grace to other people. But who are we to like the passage says, who are we to be angry at him for being kind and generous to other people?
Sure.
And then why are we not kind and generous to other people, like in return? So that was like something that really stood out for me, that God's grace is just so good.
Yeah,
It's good.
that's massive. That's massive. So I mean, this is just an introduction to the kingdom of God, and as you can see already, as Rachel was saying, it's kind of upside down. It's kind of like not what we expect, and that's a good thing, because that's one of the reasons I know that Christianity is not made up by man, is that like you can't make this stuff up. This is like so way above the way how we think, right? And really look forward to like plugging into this and finding out more about God, this sovereign God. Like, what does that mean that he's sovereign? And we've just touched on that today. And what does the kingdom of God mean? So really looking forward to that. Guys, don't forget our competition. It's still running. Everyone wins. Remember, everyone wins something. So you just have to take part.
You're a winner.
Right? And then the grand prize is 2 things, which one person will win 2 things. So guys, watch the whole video, and get your friends to come and watch, and we'll see what you're gonna win.
Ooh, nice.
Akasej, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
It was good.
Yeah.
It was good. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
And guys, we'll see you next week. Don't forget, like, share, subscribe. Come on. Let's do it.
All right. Bye.
Ciao.
Peace.